So I was a painter, yeah, and you know, I started 14 years old just sanding and painting everything that came in front of me. And we were using all oil-based finishes then, and it was just a lot of poison. Lead was phased out mostly by the time I started, 85, 86. But there was still, you know, a lot of lead exposure. A lot of buildings still had lead paint on them.
Right.
That was well known, but, you know, mercury was also another, yeah, and it still is. Come on, it's still in medicine and stuff. But mercury was in paint a lot, and there was a lot of solvents and things that, you know, if you stood in a room like this, new construction, your eyes would be watering.
Right.
We'd have a bit of
just with everything, all the off-gassing, and
we'd have a bit of a dizzy feeling right now. And,
right.
you know, used to go out and have a cigarette, you know, get a break from it.
go get some fresh air and,
Yeah.
and have a cigarette. Keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
So eventually the acrylics started to come around, and they weren't very good at first, but they were water-based, and you didn't have to have your hands in solvent and, you know, kerosene and mineral spirits and toluene and naphtha. So there's a lot of nasty solvents involved that acrylic seemed to be able to replace.
Okay.
But what happened is acrylic didn't work that good, and this vinyl started to come around, and that stuff is toxic too. But I didn't know it at the time. And then the solvents that go in to try to pretend that everything's okay.
Right.
It's this pretend game, like, oh, the solvents that you knew were poisoning you, that you had to go out and get fresh air from, well, those are gone now, and now it's these hidden solvents. I had no clue. You know, I'd go into a paint store and say, okay, give me the stuff that doesn't stink, the stuff that's safer, the stuff I'm fooled into thinking I don't need a respirator for.
Right.
And so, you know, less precautions. And as it turned out, that stuff is what did me in. It nearly killed me.
And when you say did you in, what exactly
It triggered
happened?
an autoimmune reaction where, and it still happens. It just happened this week. I got a radiator blew, and the ethylene glycol came out into the air, you know, because ethylene glycol is the solvent that's used in paint and antifreeze.
Okay.
And I smelled some of that, and immediately that day, and for 2 days really, my immune system started attacking my joints and my shoulder. I couldn't even lift it. I have to stay away from those kinds of solvents still to this day. But my life was threatened. I had to go on chemotherapy. You know, it was 2 years of having no clue what was wrong. You know, I went from healthy as could be to crippled. I mean, you know, couldn't walk, couldn't get around at all. My lungs were under attack, my kidneys, my sinuses, every joint in my body, my tongue, my eyes, just my whole system was just going haywire. And basically what it was saying, and modern medicine didn't know, really had a hard time finding what was wrong. But basically my body was saying, you're poisoned. Get away from this stuff. Overload.
Right.
And, you know, eventually I found a great doctor who, Dr. Perret, who figured out what was going on and, you know, got me on massive doses of chemo and massive doses of steroids. And it saved my life. I was dying. But
and were you still in?
I was in Jersey.
In Jersey then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And but it wasn't enough. That medicine and all of that saved me, but it wasn't enough to get me better. It wasn't enough to give me a life back. I was very sick on that medicine. Now it was better than the disease I have is called Wegener's vasculitis. It's an autoimmune disorder. So it was better than that. But still, I couldn't continue. So I packed up and I moved down North Carolina, and I had to increase my chemo injections, and I moved to a Zen center who said, okay, you can do that. And I didn't know if I was going to live or die, and I really believe in my mind is the root problem here. You know, if I can control my thinking, my life gets better. So I went to the Zen Center to train. I was training to be a priest, and I was taking chemo injections in the stomach at that time.
So there was a spiritual component here as well with...
Oh yeah, I didn't want to die. I wanted to try to do something good, you know, with my time. And I realized there that because they were trying this non-toxic paint that had vinyl in it. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's see. And I still didn't know anything about paint being the problem. and I put my hand in to feel the viscosity
Right.
of this paint. And within an hour, my whole wrist, the paint was still on my fingers. Within an hour, my whole wrist had that autoimmune reaction where it was just swollen, and I couldn't have lifted a pencil. You know, I couldn't get it was just very painful, like a bunch of hornets would sting me. My immune system would attack those joints there. And it was the first time that it was like concrete evidence. You know, like, all right, there it is. That happened, and it was right after touching that paint and what was in that paint. And so that triggered the beginning of the thinking that led to Earthpaint.
Okay.
You know, so I saw this soil, and if you look at this wall behind you here, that's Earthpaint right there. That's earth plaster. And this soil down here in North Carolina, I thought, all right, so the paint is poisonous. Why don't we use dirt? There's dirt in the paint. Let's try some dirt from the backyard.
Right.
And it's still on the Zen Center up there. We did an instrument room hallway with it. And, you know, commercial traffic and that stuff is still holding up.